the loco program is for recent graduates in the built environment fields such as architecture, construction management, carpentry, civil engineering, just to name a few. And it's a really intensive but exciting program. You get to be part of a project from conception all the way to completion, and you switch roles and you get to learn different kinds of things in different times, and you really grow as an individual and as a professional. And without any further ado, let me just introduce Luca Astorri. He is an architect all the way from Italy, and he's worked with OMA around Koolhas from 2006 to 2008, yes. And he's also worked with numerous NGOs in Kenya and Brazil and in Egypt as well. And he is also the partner and the co-founder of the loco program here in Lesotho. And he's going to be speaking on architecture as a collaborative process. And
thank you. Thanks everyone to host this lecture again. It's really a pleasure to be here again with you. Since we're a bit late, I tried to start. So I want to talk about architecture as a collaborative process. As you can see, we already, part of the lecture was like try to set up the screen as a collaborative work. So thanks to the team. What I would like, why every time I came here, I mean, I tried to find something into the project that I've done with my office and other offices, as Nicola here, to kind of expose, but also to find a link with what we are doing here. We're working as a team right now in after Afoso for doing a project for IDAL. And you know, sometimes it's difficult to dealing with people, to work with other person, to involve, engage the clients, the community, the consultant. Of course, it's easier many times to work. It's easier to work alone, but that doesn't mean that you actually go really far, or the project in the end is going to be a real success. So I'm going to show 3 projects that my office in Milan, AUM, did with others. So we were invited for doing a project, we did a competition, but we always try to collaborate with others. So in this case, it's an educational farm in Azerbaijan that we did with, we need to collaborate. We involved with PN Landscape, that is an agronomist, and also Petrogeo, that is the geologist. Why this is the site? So it's a land in Azerbaijan, as you can see here. So in the south, at the border with Iran, it's called Lankaran, and it's a really beautiful place. Used to be, the climate in Azerbaijan, it's like a kind of Mediterranean climate, so it's really similar to Italy. They used to have the 50% of the country of Azerbaijan used as agricultural land, but they lost a lot of type of vegetable. A lot of production was reduced during the Soviet occupation. For example, they have winery, vineyards, they do more crops, a lot of rices, tea, for example. But during the Soviet period, of course, Soviet, like Russian doesn't drink wine, they drink vodka, so they changed the landscape, and they changed the production from wine so from grapes to potatoes, for example, and they destroyed a lot of the land. So here's the site, is around 8,500 hectares of landscape. We didn't have any maps, we didn't have any drawings. The owners comes to us and said, well, I have this, I want to do something special for the country. I want to do a project that is going to be a milestone for all the region, but also for the others to involve, also to be an example to all the other farmers to start a new production of food. More relate not to intensive and massive, but more to organic. So they call us to doing the master plan. This is how the weather change So it's really similar also to here, like in winter, I mean our winter, so January, it's snowing a lot, and then they have hot and wet summer. And of course, like, there's a lot of issues when you do a farm, and if you want to do an organic farm, you cannot say, I want 1,000 of cow, 1,000 of hectare of corpse, many animals, but you need to balance. So when he said, I want to do something special, we were into research of what means organic farming, what it means. So we start studying permacultural. Permaculture, it's a really complex word. It's even beyond organic. That means that instead of organic, usually you cultivate a plant and you don't use any chemical, any fertilizing. You're just going like with nature elements. But basically you look at the plant or at your field. In permaculture, the main concept is that it's a holistic approach. So you don't look at the plant, but actually you look at the entire environment. So if you want a cow, you also need that kind of flower. If you need the flower, you need that kind of bees, and so on. Everything is related. And of course this is, as an architect, we had to study a lot, but also we had to involve other people. That's why we involve the agricultural engineer and the agronomist, because they knew better than us. But of course, what would have been impossible to design all these projects without that people. That of course, there was a kind of sometimes friction during the process, because of course, what they want, what they imagine that all the landscape beautiful without any architecture, without any infrastructure, but of course there's also the request and the needs of the client. So you need to balance everything. You know, we want a straight road, and they say no, straight road is not okay. It's better to doing curving. So you need to find a balance. But in the end, after a 1 year, 6 months of research, 6 months of a project, after 1 year, we made a huge a massive project, and that you can see here, invasive technique in addition to deep ploughing, elimination of natural vegetation, and intense grazing have triggered erosion and accentuated slope instability. So everything that was done before, that was not of course organic, but really intensive agriculture, destroy the landscape. So we try to work with the nature, work with the engineer, to make the project to rebalance all the sides. So this is the entire map. What we did the first was also mapping. Mapping was really important. That's also why we involved the geologist to actually make a huge surveys on the area, to map, but also to understand which kind of soil we had. And we discovered that actually what was the hill, actually he said this layer of soil usually is like 50 meters below the real surface. So it means that during the Soviet, actually they put it down, they literally demolish, I don't know how to say, like remove part of the hill. I don't know for which reason, probably to make it more flat for agriculture, but actually they ruin the nature and the environment around. So we did this huge map with the permacultural concept. It's quite complex system, so you have 5 zones. So you divide the area in 5 zones. One is the central area, is the one where the people live. So it's the core, the heart of the system. Then you have the other zone is circular, so we have the first one where there's the main house, the orchard, and the pets or the animal that you can keep it next to the house. Then you have a second zone, there is where you have the cutter, like cows, sheep, whatever. And then you have a third zone where you have a kind of agriculture. The fourth zone is where you actually use for the cattle. And the fifth zone is the wilderness. So you don't touch the system because you need all of them together. So we redraw that, we did the mapping. So as you can see here is the zone 1. So there's the main house with the orchard and so on. There's just an image. Of course, we look into the vernacular architecture So they have a really steep roof, but they also have all this. In agriculture, architecture is what is beautiful when you go in the countryside, that usually the house is like, you start with a nuclear, with one nuclear, one unit, and then of course the family grows, so you add another house, then you add the kitchen, then external kitchen, then your grandson comes home, you add another stuff. So we try to integrate this adding since the beginning of the design. You can see here starting of the modeling and so on, but also like, since it was an educational farm, we decide with the client what we can do. If it's an educational farm, that means that you need to bring people to training or to show them. So we also design a farm, a guest house, a kind of module that can be used as a, let's say, like a lodge, but also has a wine or actually tea taste, but it can also be used as a training complex. So we designed this small module that is come from like a local house that they have this really tall roof. We designed, it's a kind of three layers, so 3 stores. So you have the ground floor that can be used as a, let's say if it's a tea taste, can be used to show the different kind of tea they produce. Then you can go up, but you can also see, so you can go and drink and you can see the landscape and so on and so on. So then, as I said, there's intensive agriculture in the zone 2, and again other example how to put the trees. Here's some image of this kind of zone where you always need to balance the wildness and the part that is cultivated. So in the zone 3 we have the rices area, so you can see, because also where to put the rice field. Of course in the lowest part of the valley, because the water anyway, you can collect the water easily instead of have the rice on top. All these things, of course, all this information came to the relationship with the engineer, agriculture engineer, and with the geologist. Otherwise, we might have put the rice in the wrong position. Even if we are super smart architect, anyway, there are things that we don't know, right? So here again, working with them, how you prevent, like, if it's an holistic approach, so you need to keep the animal inside your land, not to keep them out. So what we do, it's introduce what we call like green fingers. So basically we replant part of the forest along the edge of the different zones, so they can be corridors for the animals. If you have a desert, let's say not the desert, if you have an intensive agricultural piece of land, the animal cannot go from one point to another one. They can, but of course they need to cross your farm, so you shoot them. Someone else will kill them. They need to cross the road, so someone, go take over. So what you could do, you do natural corridors. When the animal, they are smarter than us, instead of walking here, they go through the corridor to cross your land. And this also brings more biodiversity. A land without biodiversity, it's a dry land. And also, of course, like, we keep the wildness. So in between, we create a larger part of place that we didn't touch. Or actually, we increment this part of the trees and the forest. Here is all the forest. It's a park, natural park, that of course was destroyed during the Soviet. And we try to recreate this natural corridor and also use the trees as a windbreaker, because there's always a wind coming from the same direction that of course is not good, neither for the human beings but also for agriculture. And that's why we study this kind of grid to plant the trees, that of course we discuss with the agricultural engineer. It was a huge process, long process, many discussions, many fights, of course, because maybe the wind trees was passing exactly where we want to put the house. And the engineer and geologist, they'll say, well, that's not the best post, even if it was the best view, so we need to shift the house. But in the end, all the process, as a holistic approach again, it works really well, because we know now that everything is in the right place, because it was a huge work. As you can see here, for this project we work like around, in a year, around 20 persons. Many architects, engineer, civil engineer, agriculture engineer, all together. And as we state, we all know that our work is humble, but the union of our humble works is extraordinary. So if everyone works together, they can even achieve a better project. This one is another project in a completely different environment. This is a school in Malawi. It's actually the site, is this site here. There's a competition, we won the 3rd prize, that I did with another architect, another office that we both work in many projects here in the continent, in the region. He also worked a lot with Francis Keret, that is an architect from Burkina Faso, you might know him. So we work together, and of course, like, when you put 2 architects, two offices together, there's always a problem of who's gonna lead the design, who is right, who is wrong, what you like or what I don't like. So you need to be kind of step back sometimes and let the others lead or open the discussion. I really like to fight, let's say. I like conflict, because out of conflict, if of course it's you set up the discussion for be more creative, to structure and to build something new. It's a good fight. I mean, depends what you fight for, but but sometimes many times I step back and say, okay, he likes square, let's do a square. He likes a circle, let's do a circle. But you keep opening, like you stretch the limit of a design around you to try to find the best design. So we work, well, we did when you do competition in really short time. Also, you do by night. So I was doing this competition, meanwhile we were doing another competition by day. So we did only by night for kind of 3 weeks. But we spend a lot of time of discussing. This is like, I don't know, maybe the 30s or 40s options, that in the end was the one that, after many discussions and fights, we came across. The idea was like, the request for the competition was kind of crazy, because they asked for phasing. They want a compound for 300 students, each phase, 3 phases for 100 students, but they want the house for the professor immediately. That doesn't make sense, because you have all the professors, but you don't have all the students, so it was a kind of strange. But let's say, okay, fine. So we try to also, since we work a lot in Africa, there's lack of resources, there was not a lot of money, and they have laterite. I don't know, maybe here in the region you don't have, but in many part of Africa, Mali, Kenya, Burkina Faso, Malawi, and Mozambique, you have laterite. It's basically a stone that you can carve, you can take out from the quarry. So we study a module that can work for many purposes. So as a classroom, but can work also as an office, as a lab. So by studying one model, of course, you don't have a lot of time, but also if you need to build in phase and things that you start the first, but then other people will took over the project, they need to replicate the project many times, it's better to study one technique, one module, than the people they can do after by themselves. And of course we study, they ask, it's an agricultural university. For fields, they ask for animals, but they ask for professor house, student house. The land in the end seems a huge plot, but in the end there was not so much space. So what we decided, in any work with court, so even if you start with phase 1, then it will not look unfinished. So you have the entrance, you have the offices and the professor's house, and you have the first phase 1. Then if it's not finished, and of course you have one set of 4 student houses. If they don't go for the other phases, at least every unit works together. They work alone as independent object, but they also work together. And each unit has a courtyard for doing a small vegetable garden for the professor, for the student, but also they have, if they don't build the other infrastructure, facilities, they can use all the rest for gardening. So as you can see here, there was like the idea to phase 1, so the unit for sleeping, some schools, rooms, the library, that of course the library also, we put the library close to the roads, so it can be used by everyone. And then each court also, there was the topic of collecting the water, water harvesting, wind, vegetable garden. I mean, it was a really complex topic, because when you do such an investment, you need to think how to preserve water, how to preserve the land, or actually also use the land in a more intelligent way. So that's the idea, that in any unit, this is the classroom unit, you can have a space, a courtyard protected by the wind, where when the students can also exercise training to doing the gardening and to farm. So that's the structure, that's the module. You have the walls, then you have kind of a ceiling done with the vaults, and then on top you have a metal structure and then the metal roof. But also we provide shade and seat in exteriors. All this information came joining an engineer that also helped us with the environmental and the sun. As you can see here, there's like a small concrete, just a concrete foundation. But then again with laterite, then you have wind crossing ventilation. The roof is detached from the real ceiling, so that it can be a ventilation between the metal sheet roof and the ceiling. So that's also keep the air circulating. And of course, like every unit has a roof that brings the water inside. You can reuse or actually use for farming. So here again, as you can see, the unit, every unit there's a corridor outside, there's a seat and the shade, relate to of course, to the travel of the sun. There's a place in between the units where the kids can also play. And this is the unit where you can see the prefabricated ceiling. Also, everything was kind of idea to prefabricate everything, in the sense that when you learn a technique, then you can keep doing and doing and doing for many other projects. Of course, thanks to Nicola that did the render. It's a beautiful image, I would say. Also, these things, sometimes like, you collaborate with others. So I collaborate a lot with the office of Nicola, that I will show you the last project, and they are really good in images and representation, among other thousands of things they are good of. So sometimes they help us to doing also the images. And here is the last project that is also a competition, that I will share the presentation with Nicola, where we work together. Actually, he was invited to doing, also the things to be humble. Humble, it's a good thing. You need to be strong and fight when you need, but you also need to be humble to understand when you can do things alone, or actually when you need others. So his client was inviting him to doing a resort in Italy, a huge area. It's 35 hectares, but not that big, but anyway, kind of a size that's complex, give a kind of complexity. And he was humble enough to invite us to doing with them the project, and in a huge structural engineer office, because the project was massive, because they asked more than 10,000 square meters to be built. So it's like resort, it's like Marina Resort. So you see the office, ACQ is the office of Nicolas. AEI is the engineer office, and AUM is my office. So we did this project together. So the resort was like, is in an island, it's in Sardinia, and it's situated here. So this is the site, 35 hectares that right now are abandoned, there's nothing. And the client asked for a project that they asked for hotels, boutique hotels, sport facilities, restaurants, villas, and so on, but also like to implement the landscape. It was a competition, so we worked together. There was a like moment of, not friction, but anyway, where, again, as I said, everybody, we are both architects, so you need to decide who's doing what. You need also to trust the others, but also able to challenge in the good way when something doesn't sound correct. So we did, my office did the master plan and the landscape, and his office did the part of architecture and interior for the villas. But of course there was always an exchange of values, exchange of ideas, exchange of concept, because in the end we trust each other, and we know that sometimes if I do something wrong, he can say, hey Luca, I don't think that maybe in the other way works better. So here is the site. We have on the south we have a boundary for with the train. So also there's a problem, because you do a resort, and of course the client doesn't, the tourist doesn't want to see the train station and all the trains. So we have to create a buffer zone here to protect the site from the train. And then we organized the site in 3 different areas. The first one is the facilities where you enter, and then so you have the restaurant, everything that is more related with the public, so it's semi-private. Then you have the hotels and the villas, and then you have the last part that is the most natural part, that also we didn't touch that much. The idea was like not to change the landscape, because the landscape as the view is wonderful, but actually to foster the existing landscape as it was. And also when you do this, when you do any kind of this project, a house from a really small space to a bigger one, you need to think about the access and the flux of the people. If you have the tourist, then you have the staff, then there's need someone else to come and clean, and then there are also leisure. You cannot make the same path for everyone, otherwise they cross every time. So we thought there would be a nice idea to have a different access and different roads for the different users. So here is the first, the entrance, what we call entrance clusters, where we have all the facilities that are not related to accommodation, but are for the people that live, that's gonna rent the house there. So here is the second part, the central part with the villas, that Nicola will explain later. And here, of course, the landscape, it's more artificial, it's more design, it's more, we call hardscapes. And of course, from here, from the villas, where there are the beautiful view toward the sea, here is where we decide to not change too much the landscape, but leave it and foster the natural and the indigenous plants. So here again, of course, there was a big issues of privacy, because when you have many huge villas and people that comes and want a kind of a privacy, we also use the landscape to kind of protect the views, protect the rooms, and so on. Other images. I'm sorry, it's a bit scattered, the images pixelated, but anyway, this is what we call the loop. So we try to reuse all the trays, the existing trays that you found on site, and to connect them with this loop that is what we call it like a leisure trail. So the people can use those parts that there's no volumes, there's no construction, just for pleasure. It's like to walk here up on the highlands with beautiful hills. You just walk around. What we did is like we create along the loop some moments, few moments where the people can stop and do activities. Because sometimes, you know, with tourism, you need to bring the tourists, but also to keep it them. So you need to give them some activities. So here is like the yoga center. Here there's a space with just trees, and where you can sit, wait, read, relax. Here there's a small food garden next to a bar or like a kiosk where they can have a kind of drinks or something to eat during the day. There's also Belvedere where you can see all the sites. Here again, the wellness spot. So here there are many people that likes to run. So since the site was a kind of compact and all this part is built with accommodation and hotels, we decide to use why we don't use this loop and mark the road with colors so the people knows how many kilometers they run around. And here the concept for the villa that I leave it to Nicola to explain.
Thank you so much. I'm very glad to be here. The concept is like, your first step, the first step that you did when you are thinking about a project. The interesting thing in this kind of project that we didn't make the concept of the villa after, but we did the concept of the villa before. You have to trust me, work with Luca is not hard, it's very hard, because he's very humble, but at the same time, he's very tough. So he struggles all the time. So we have this kind of familiar approach to the project, and this is the reason why I love to work with him and love to work with other people. I mean, like architects or engineer or whatever. This is the reason why we would like to speak also about the concept of the villa, because it's like, it's not only a building, it's a system that is built with the landscape in this case. So here you have two images. These are related to the land. So the concept is very linked and related to what we have just nearby. This is a cork tree. And so the idea, we have at least two big problems of the area. I mean, the seaside was faced on the north side, on the north. So we have some problems just to organize the system of the villas, the interior design. This is a mood board, is like what kind of materials we used just to do the concept. And this is...
Sorry, just say, the north in our hemisphere,
yes, it
means no sun, shade and cold. So usually when you go to the sea, you want to face the south, that is your north, to have the sun, enjoy the view, except so it's flipped from here. So the north side for us was a bad side, because you have the sun on the back, so you're facing nothing, okay?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm sorry. It's good. This is the first image, but we will be back to that. The idea, so relating to this kind of situation, the geographical situation, was to find the correct solution just to bring light into the design and the villas. We work as architects, but we need to work with passion and with attention of the building that was already built by our culture. So we need some sort of, how can I say? Yes, vernacular architecture. So the idea was to build a house with patios and courtyards. We had more or less 4 typologies of square meters, so the idea was to cut a little bit the building and to bring light even in the north part and the south part of the building. The other thing was that we don't have a lot of slopes on the area, so the idea was just to have a small house, one floor house, with terraces that can be used for other activities. And obviously, talking about the north, you know that is your south. Here we have the first view of the seaside. So the first view of the seaside, it's related not only to the first floor of the villa, but the best views that you can have is on the terrace. This is the reason why we choose to do this kind of approach. This is related to the sun that goes around, but we will see later about that, and the ventilation and the system of the wind that we have in this kind of island. This is an important part of the concept, because we made villas for people that have to stay just for a few weeks or few months or years, so we can rent or sell the villas. So the idea was just to have this sort of wall that is protecting the interior design of the villa, and it's like, you know, something that you cannot understand from the exterior part, but when you are in, you can discover an entire world. So as you can see, the entrance is here, like we saw in the first image. So this is the main entrance, is here. And, I'm sorry. So the idea basically was to have a big portion in the middle that is the living part of the house, that is not only related with the entrance, but is related to the garden and swimming pool, and to all the spaces that are in connection with the rest of the house. So it's always related to the north side, that is in this case. So our option was to put the bedrooms all in this area and the kitchen in that one. So the idea was basically to have this kind of continuous view at the interior. So you are inside, but you are always outside. So this basically was the first idea, and we worked a lot on this kind of concept, just to be clear that you are in a living room, but as well you are in a sort of garden in the meantime. So during the summer you can use the living room could be 70 square meters, but as well 100 square meters, and then you have the garden just in front. So it's a double space. You can see in the meanwhile you are in the kitchen, but as well you are outside in the garden. So it's a sort of literally it's a courtyard at the end, but the patios helps the light it helps us to bring the lights in. And what the client loved about the project was that we respect the landscape. So is that why we talk a lot about the first concept, about the first step, just to say, okay, we don't need a particular roof, we can make a plain roof and use it for other possible activities. So we put a garden here, a solarium in this part that is correctly oriented on south, a swimming pool in the angle in the south part, and here you can have like a sort of pantry here, just a small kitchen to, if you want to eat outside during the night or during the day. It's quite hot, but yes. Anyway, so you can see this kind of relation. And the important thing in this image is that all the concept that we had before, talking about the landscape that is in between the project, was just to have a sort of barrier of green that is in between the two villas. So in the meanwhile, we are talking not only about a concept that is related to the interior. These are images. You can see the swimming pool that is related as well to the kitchen and to the exterior part. It's true that here we work not so much with the client because it was was a competition. So we had some indications about the square meters, the approach, but we built our kind of idea related to the landscape and what probably they really need and they lost in the next in the project that we had before. So here you can find some section, but anyway. So you can see this wall is a sort of wall that is protecting from the rest of the villas, but as well it's a passage that you can use just to go around your house and stay protected for the rest of the people that are living next to you. The interesting thing is that all the villas are looking the seaside, so the image, the other image is completely different for the first one. So here we are completely open to the landscape and we are close to the south part of the area that is linked to the facility that Lucas explained you before. Here we work with the typologies, but it's just a question of square meter. And then this is another image. So we finished our presentation, I think. I bring back to Luca the...
Thanks. No, it's just like, also like, just to say to the fellows and everyone that also this competition was done after the other one of the Malawi school, so it was like, and before came here in June, July, it was a really tough period. And of course you need to match all these things, so competition, but then you also have the other work running, construction site, university, so all these things we work like, the last week I think we, from 9 to 3, 4 a.m. every day to finish, because also I'm humble, but he's not also really tough, so super precise in all the things to make everything perfect. Perfection doesn't exist, but you can get close, and of course when you work with others, it's difficult because of course like you see in the renders all these plants, they hate me because of course we choose every single plant here and here, flowers and trees, and they were doing the renders and they hate us. When they, of course, they sent the first preview, was beautiful, but then my partner in the office says, this is not the right position for the trees. We need to, it's not big enough, it needs to be here. And I say, okay. I say, okay, Nick, it was 2 a.m., so you need to shift a bit the trees because it's not exactly where it should have been, you know. And you work like this, and then, but then in the end, the project is finished. It can be something else probably, can change again and again and again in the next phases, but still that all this work together with many architects brings to a building that I'm sure I couldn't be designed alone, and even Nicolò. Maybe it's something different, maybe it's still beautiful, but not this one, where we believe the collaborative process is a good answer for the project, as for the one where we are doing now. Okay, if you have any questions, we will be happy to answer. Thanks a lot again.